25 signed up, but let's go for it.
Okay. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're happy to be here, and I know you probably have had a busy day, so we thank you for just spending some time with us. We're going to go ahead and do some introductions. My name is Kimberly Humphries. I am Director of Student Support for iLead Schools. I've been in education for about 26 years. I started off as a special day class teacher. Then moved into became a school psychologist, so spent 12 years doing that. Then assistant principal, and now director of student support. So thank you once again for being here with us today. And I'll go ahead.
No worries. And good afternoon, everybody. I'm Kristan Hinze. I'm Deputy Director of Student Support, and I have the pleasure of working with Kim day in and day out for iLead California. We are a charter program that has 6 different programs, 7 programs actually underneath our iLead California name. And we are covering all of Southern California. And our student support title really is think of special education. That's really what our realm is. But I have been in education since 2005. Everywhere from being as a substitute through being a full inclusion teacher to a special day class teacher, both at a mild moderate level as well as an ED level. I then moved into administration, and now I made the jump from a public school. I'm in my 3rd year with iLead, and wouldn't change it for the world. Absolutely love the charter program, and we'll share a little bit more about that with you guys in just a little while. So our driving question for today is, how can I create an inclusive classroom that supports all learners? And that's something that is a big part of our mission and our vision within iLead, is that all learners are supported within the classroom. We are a full inclusion charter program. We do not have any special day classes. And so as we work with families, this is a big part of our drive for our learners. So I have a little question for you guys that we will get into in just a second. But our goal for today is really for you to understand the benefits of inclusion, learn strategies for implementing inclusive teaching and behavior practices, as well as developing collaboration skills for supporting all learners effectively. We'll unlock some prior knowledge and experience that you may have as an educator, and then we'll move into really what is inclusion and what tools can you use and take away from today's presentation in your day in and day out operations. So if you want to go ahead and take your phone, scan that QR code and answer the question of what is inclusion. It'll take you to a Padlet. If you are on your phone, at the bottom of that Padlet screen, there's a little plus arrow. What you'll do is just go ahead and type in your answer. So I'll give you just about two minutes to go ahead and answer that in, and we'll jump over to the other screen. Unfortunately, I don't have the links pulled, so let me see if I can pull that really quick. Providing an opportunity for all students to participate in the classroom. Thank you, Graceful. Kangaroo, I like the names that it populates when you don't put your own name in. Give it about another 30 seconds and then we'll move on. Just wanted to kind of get some feedback from the group. I know we're small today. Okay. We'll go back here. So inclusion is about more than just a physical presence, about a meaningful participation. The goal is with inclusion is to immerse all students in the classroom environment, from academics to extracurriculars, and with the right supports in place. Obviously, making sure that we're meeting the needs of all learners. It's about ensuring equity, valuing diversity within each of the schools. Oh, did it not load? I can try to go back to it really quick. Let's see if this will. Oh, there's a whole bunch more that populated. Thanks for sharing that. For some reason, it wasn't populating on my end. Ensuring that all students are provided with the opportunities to learn, expression over regulation. Inclusion is the practice of including individuals from all backgrounds and ability types into one setting where everyone feels valued and included in the learning experiences. Fantastic. Equally teach all levels in the classroom and providing, and then inclusion is having education for all without judgment and exclusion of disabilities. Thank you for Nicole, and there was somebody else, Kristan, for pointing that out. Greatly appreciate it. So we'll go back here really quick. So we're going to go ahead and watch a quick little video. It's about 3 minutes, just to kind of, I love using this video, just understanding inclusive education.
Hi, my name is Shelley Moore, and I'm a third-year PhD student at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver. As Canadians, we have a reputation for finding and embracing the strength in our diversity. This value, however, hasn't been reflected in our classrooms, which still segregates students by ability, especially students with developmental disabilities. There's a gap in our understanding about what we know inclusive education to be philosophically versus what we understand and the importance of understanding inclusion in our practice. This is the question I'm trying to answer in my research, is how can we find the value in the day-to-day practice in our classrooms in terms of inclusive education? So how am I going to explain this to you? Now I can sit here and try and describe this, or we could have a little bit more fun. Why don't we go bowling? So let's talk about bowling. You have 10 pins, you have 2 balls, and you have a lane. The goal is to knock down as many pins as you can. But if you don't get them all, it's okay because you have another chance. But when I bowl and roll the ball down the middle and I don't knock them all down, what often ends up happening to me is that there's 2 pins left standing on either end and they stare at you. It's the 7-10 split and it's the hardest shot in bowling. How is bowling like teaching? The ball was the lesson, the pins are the kids. We aim for the middle, we do the best we can. The pins that are left standing, we often have another chance to kind of get to them. But at the end of the day, those 2 pins that are staring, looking at you are kids who need the most support and are kids who need the most challenge. So we end up choosing one and the other one is left standing. I just took all the fun out of bowling. Now, I don't know how many times you've watched professional bowling, but I spent an afternoon watching professional bowling. And let me tell you, there was not one bowler who rolled that ball down the middle of the lane. They threw the ball down the lane at a curve. And I was actually really curious about this. So I called up a professional bowler. He was so excited. I don't think he gets a lot of calls about education. He said the reason why the ball has to enter at a curve is because you will knock down more pins and create a bigger domino effect if you enter at that angle. But in order to do that, you have to change your aim. In order to knock down the most pins with one shot, he aims for the pins that are the hardest to hit. Now let's just let this sink in for a second. We are taught to teach the head pins. We are not taught to teach the kids who are the furthest and the hardest to get to, the kids with autism, kids with Down syndrome. The part that's critical here, and it really aligns with universal design for learning, is that so often the supports that we design for those kids on the outside of the lane are actually supports that all of the kids need. This is the part we need to understand if inclusive education is going to move forward in Canada. How can we find this value of diversity in our classrooms between the students? This is not just important for the outside pins, but it's critical for every single one of us. And just think, all we need to do is change our aim. Look how bowling changed education.
Totally agree, Kristen. And I like what your comment you put in there is she's got a fantastic YouTube channel if for those of you that are not familiar with it. So thank you, Kristen, for dropping that in the channel or in the chat, excuse me. So do me a favor, go ahead and in the chat, go ahead and answer these questions. What stood out to you about this video? What connections can you make to your own experiences or expectations? Yeah, absolutely, Nicole. A lot of us, you know, as parents and in education, have to go home and work with our own children. And so for some of us, we deal with our own children at home having disabilities. And so you're right, as learning more about inclusive education, it definitely helps build our knowledge for us to be able to work at home and at school. And so it's beneficial. The one thing that stands out to me is, and the one thing I've been kind of embedding in my own work day in and day out for the last 20 years has been, you know, the things that we do for our learners with disabilities are typically strategies that help support all learners in the classroom. And so that is one thing that as you kind of go into education, if you're new, or if you are looking to kind of get some new ideas from Teach for LA when you're in these presentations over the next couple of days, is really look at broadening your horizons and seeing what can we take away from our own experiences, as well as then what we can bring into the classrooms to help all learners. Kim?
Okay, so we're going to move into our why. Why are we building classrooms that are inclusive for all learners? And it turns out there's benefits on both sides. And also, I would argue for the teacher or the instructor as well. But for students with disabilities, they get a chance to develop positive social emotional skills, including building social relationships. Oftentimes that is an area, a huge area for growth for students with disabilities. So just being with their typically developing peers or neurotypical peers, they have that opportunity to develop, you know, to increase their social emotional skills and also build some really strong relationships. They get to acquire and use knowledge and skills, including early language and communication and early literacy skills. They get a chance to use appropriate behaviors to meet their own needs. For example, adaptive or self-help skills such as feeding oneself. They get to see positive behavior modeled, which will increase, and I've seen it happen, increase their own positive behavior in the classroom.
Sorry, my cursor was off the screen. There you go.
And then the benefit of inclusion for students without disabilities, they build meaningful friendships. There's an increased appreciation and acceptance of individuals with differences. There's an increased understanding and acceptance of diversity. There's respect for all people. They build a respect for all people, and they kind of learn how everybody has a part of making their classroom community just really positive. It prepares all students for adult life and in an inclusive society. There's opportunities to master activities by practicing and teaching others. There's greater academic outcomes, and all students needs are better met and greater resources for all students, just like Kristan shared that the resources that we use for students with disabilities is oftentimes very beneficial for students without disabilities as well.
And obviously this list is very small compared to really the full benefits of what it is for students without disabilities. One thing I do want to share is a little story. At one of our campuses, we have what's called a play date, and we have the middle school learners have a rock band, and we have a student with Down syndrome who is in 8th grade this year. Has started with us on the campus as a 5th grader. And as he has been around these peers, he has immersed himself in the rock band. And he actually had the opportunity to perform with that rock band back in the end of April, just before, just after our spring break, and got up there in front of the crowds and played the drums. And he actually did learn how to sing one of the songs. And so he had the same experiences just like his peers did. And I think that that's what's important to think about, is we want to be able to give these learners across the board the opportunities just like everyone else. So as we look for, when we think of inclusion, we think of special education students pushed into the general education classroom. But as we look at this, again, we want you to keep in mind that inclusion is about all students in the classroom. And so as we talk about differentiation, accommodations and modifications can apply to all students. Well, accommodations can apply to all students. Modifications are only students with IEPs, because we don't want to differentiate that curriculum if they're on grade level. Co-teaching, as well as reteaching and reinforcement activities. So giving the students the opportunities to, whether it's teaching each other or teaching or learning the concept again in a different way from a different teacher, sometimes can help students see that curriculum in a different way. So moving into differentiated instruction, a short little video just about, how differentiation takes the path it does. Oopsies.
Kristen, we don't have the sound. Can you hear?
There is actually no sound, but let me figure that piece out. It's just words. So as we look at differentiation, and even with specialized academic instruction, one thing to think about is obviously the SAI minutes are what is provided by a special education teacher. This is determined by the IEP team, and the goals are helping drive this service to be able to help the learner make growth in their academic areas. So an inclusive setting, the SAI minutes are typically provided in the general education setting by a special education teacher or an instructional assistant, or in our terms, what we call these individuals our care team. They're our support staff on our campuses. So what do general education and special education teachers bring to co-teaching equation? And there are multiple models across education as to what co-teaching looks like. But ultimately, general education teachers really bring the knowledge of curriculum, and special education teachers really bring the supports and systems to embedding that differentiation through accommodations, through modifications, and sometimes just being another set of eyes or ears in the way to present curriculum. When I was a full inclusion teacher, when I pushed into the classroom with my group of about 15 students, sometimes I had the way of being able to work with my math teacher, the gen ed math teacher, and say, you know, the way we're going to set up one-step equations, she may say it in one way, but then maybe I can reflect and say it in a different way, or ask a question to the students to be able to make sure that they're understanding. So it's really a give and take in these situations, and being able to make sure that we're all working together. Collaboration and team planning is really crucial to the success of a co-teaching environment. Being able to make sure that you set up time to make sure that you're sitting down, going through, hey, what are the plans for next week? So that way you as a special education teacher can support the general education teacher. I say the rule of thumb is if you can sit down at least one time a week to be able to be on the same page, we have it allows us that opportunity to be able to make sure that you're able to support one another. So as I mentioned, there's 6 models of co-teaching. You have team teaching, parallel teaching, station teaching, alternative teaching, one teach, one assist, or one teach, one observe. So we'll go into what each of these looks like. And I'm not going to go in full detail, but what this obviously will be provided to you in the presentations folder. And you'll also have the recording to be able to come back and look at this. But team teaching is exactly what it means. It means that you are working together, moving, you know, both teachers in the front of I have a video in just a little while that will show what team teaching looks like. So both teachers in the front of the classroom, and when they're on independent practice or small group activity, then you're moving around the classroom to be able to support all of the learners. What does this do? I mean, think of if you could have every classroom across the nation with 2 teachers, think of the power that that would provide for us as educators, as well as also those opportunities for our learners. We'd have the ability to really show learners what collaboration is about, and being able to provide opportunities for you know, teachable moments for them to be able to see how we as adults are working in the world. What is the challenge of it? It takes time. I did not get this way with I was a full inclusion teacher for 6 years, 3 years at the 7th grade level and 3 years at the 8th grade level. And when I was team teaching, it took me a full year to be able to get to the point where we were team teaching, to where we were doing things together. And so it takes time. And so if grade levels are switched regularly, or you've got a high turnover, this is a hard way to be able to kind of move through that co-teaching practice. Parallel teaching. So in this situation, you've got 2 groups of students in the classroom, one on one side of the classroom, one on the other side of the classroom. Gen ed teacher has one group of students, special education teacher has the other groups of students, and they're teaching the same information at the same time, but in different spaces. What does this do? This allows for that smaller group ratio of students to teacher. It allows for that small group instruction. It allows for learners to feel more comfortable to ask questions and work with their peers in that small group environment. But it keeps the content at a high rigor. It keeps the engagement from students at a higher level as well. What is this challenge? The challenge is that both the facilitator and the general and the special education teacher have to have a strong knowledge in that content. So for me, I'd feel super comfortable doing this in math, but I would not feel as comfortable when it comes to like going through an ELA novel in regards to, because that's not something I'm doing day in and day out like the ELA teacher is. And so it really depends on what you're most comfortable with in this to be able to implement parallel teaching. Station teaching is where you have different stations set up. So you could have multiple different tables, students work around and move around the classroom. This one's really effective at the elementary level to be able to have 2 teachers in the classroom. They're each positioned at different tables. You have an independent workspace, maybe you have a computer station, and that way you can reduce the number of learners at the tables. You can allow for flexible grouping. You can also allow for more engagement between the smaller groups of students and the facilitators. I would even say you have the ability to have one person teach it and then students do a little bit of independent practice and have the other adult be able to work through them with it. What is this one? The challenge in this one really, learners may not all get to all the stations if not moving at the same pace. Could be noisy for some learners. It could be a struggle depending on the classroom dynamics you have for that year. So just something to consider for that one. Alternative instruction is where you are this is my favorite because you're kind of bouncing off of each other. So one person's teaching, one person's moving about in the classroom, working with typically a small group of learners, and you're going kind of back and forth. So this is the way that we kind of did a modified form of this in the full inclusion classroom that I worked in. And we had a small group of students towards the back of both gen ed and special education students. So we included students in the group that I was working with that were not identified, but struggled within math. And so we put them towards the back of the room. And while the teacher was teaching, I had the opportunity to kind of keep the students focused or ask kind of small questions of that small group that were sitting towards the back of the classroom. And then we'd switch roles. I'd sometimes jump up in the front of the classroom. Maybe I'd do the warm up and the gen ed teacher would be in the back room with this small group of students to be able to help support them. The best part about this one is it does not single out students when they're engaging in the classroom. And so it allows you to be able to kind of point out things to the learners on a quieter level, be able to make sure you're helping support them through the curriculum, and hopefully they don't fall as far behind. This one, to me, the challenge is not the data collection, because I feel like as special education teachers and even like in a math classroom, we are always collecting data. I think this one is, you just have to make sure that you're quiet when you're talking to that small group of learners. And so to me, that's not really a challenge. It's just adjusting kind of how we work through that environment. One teach, one assist. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. You as a teacher in front of the classroom, the other one's just walking around, kind of moving up and down rows, helping support, increasing that classroom management support, as well as then maybe even classroom participation. To me, when you walk up and down the aisles, when you see a student's right answer, you have the opportunity to say, great job, you got that one right. And you can kind of hint to that student, hey, when you get it, when so-and-so, when Miss Humphries goes over this problem, I want you to be able to, raise your hand because you got it right, and encourage them to participate. And maybe that builds their confidence in your classroom as well. The other thing I love about this is just that, like I mentioned, the classroom management, so if you've got a difficult class, this keeps your proximity to those learners and being able to kind of move about. It can create, the only problem with this is if you've got one teacher that typically is in the front of the room teaching and one teacher moving about, it can create a challenge where it's like one teacher's always the person who's presenting that curriculum and one's who's dealing with behavior. And you don't want to kind of pin each other against each other. And so it's really finding that balance between you and your co-teacher to be able to make sure you're working together and really sharing the roles. And so it's just learning kind of how you work through those dynamics with one another. And the last one is one teach and one observe. The instructing facilitator at the front of the classroom is teaching all the students, while the other one's just making observations in the back, being able to kind of see who's on task. This one I feel like is the most relevant when it comes to having like an instructional assistant in your classroom, kind of helping all learners in the classroom. If you have a gen ed instructional assistant, if you have somebody working and pushing in with just for SAI minutes, obviously that's their role and responsibility, is to support the learners on an IEP. You know, I can share all 6 of these models, and all of these models are great in theory, but in reality, we need to be able to make sure that administration on campuses are understanding and supporting these models, and also valuing the time in which you need to be able to plan and work with your co-teacher. So as you look through these different options that exist, start with the one you feel most comfortable with. Go to your administrator and say, hey, this is something I want to try. Or if they're pushing you to do this, jump in, start with one that you feel most comfortable with and work through the dynamics. It is a trial and error. And I think one thing that's super important to this is that we show to our students that we're learning every day as educators, just the same as they are. And we want to be able to make sure that they see us make mistakes. And so as we try things, it's okay to say, oops, got that one. I made an error up here, and catch that mistake, and let them know that, thank you, Johnny, for catching my mistake, especially if they've caught that mistake. So as you go through this, just know it's trial and error. It's building your own confidence just the same, and working through those challenges. So this is that video I was telling you about that has the team teaching at the front of the classroom. So just keep that in mind as it goes through this video.
Hands up if you agree. Let's give Juan Carlos 3 snaps and a half. 3, 1, 2, 3.
It's a mutual respect that we have for each other. She respects that I'm an educator. I'm not just somebody who's in there to service some children who have IEPs or 504s.
Hi, gentlemen, can we put our markers and boards somewhere else?
I think of her as my right hand, and myself being her right hand, the two of us really helping each other through lessons and making sure that we can get to all of the kids. And that's one of the key components of the co-teaching, is reaching all learners as fast as possible and not letting things go.
You need to say there are kids. It's not my classroom. Dawn always says our homeroom, our kids, well, we are doing this. And that makes the special educator feel more welcome.
What is nonfiction?
What is nonfiction?
And this is done like,
I feel like it's a really good model for kids to see their teachers who they look to for a role model. How are you communicating? Oh, okay, well they're disagreeing with that. How are they working that out?
Sarah and I, we actually went to college together.
And we had a couple of classes together. I think we were together for 1 semester.
And she showed up here at Norwood, and her and I were both like, I know you.
I saw her in the hallway, and I was actually really nervous. I was like, did she like me in college? Is she going to give me a good recommendation? And then, and she seemed really excited to see me.
And from that moment on, we just became friends in the building. And, you know, we can sit down and talk about kids, talk about life. And I think that it does help when you have that relationship with a co-teacher to start off at the basics, understanding where each other come from, understanding each other's lives and what's going on in your life.
You're not on an island. You have a partner, and you have to understand it's like your relationship with your spouse. You have got to talk about the uncomfortable things.
yellow folks, you need, hold up, listen first. Always listen first.
And I know that the co-teaching model also says that it is like a marriage. You go through the stages where you're dating at first. Yeah, Sarah and I, we knew each other before, but now it's a new relationship because I've never taught with her before. She had never taught with me. So now we're like in that dating phase where I'm trying to figure out, okay, well how do you want to do this? Oh, okay, well, I would rather do it like this, and going back and forth, and her saying, oh yeah, it's an awesome idea. And then we get into like the engagement where it's all exciting and we're feeling like, wow, this is working great. I love it. I think we should continue in this relationship. And then getting to that final marriage where you are going to run into problems, but it's okay because the two of you have each other. And that's what it's all about.
Another really cool benefit of co-teaching is being able to share the roles and responsibilities of what's happening in that classroom, that things don't fall on just your shoulders. And so building the capacity for a gen ed teacher on the special education side, and then you as a special education teacher have the opportunity to build your capacity on the gen ed side. And so it improves our weaknesses and supports other educators in their growth and their experiences as well. So as I mentioned, differentiated instruction provides different task activities and or assignments to all learners, and modifies how a lesson is delivered to meet the needs of all learners. This ensures that all can participate and learn at their own pace. So as you're thinking about differentiating instruction, again, you're not bringing down the level of the curriculum necessarily. That's the modifications of assignments. You are changing the way that that curriculum is presented so that a student can be able to still access that curriculum. And that I think there is a big across classrooms across our nation. I think there's a lot of confusion as to applies with accommodations and modifications. And so please know that as you're adjusting things and how you present it, it does not mean you're bringing down the level of that curriculum or modifying it. So in the chat, if you can go ahead and write in an example of differentiating instruction in the classroom. And we're going to look at this a little closer. Oops. Anybody? What's an example of differentiated instruction? When it comes to reading the same content of a passage, but at different levels. Yeah, absolutely. For those of you that may have had the awesome opportunity, if you work on a campus and have your school site either provide you with a Brisk account or even a Magic School AI, you can easily take a passage and drop it in and ask it to adjust the level, but still make sure the content is embedded in there. Next example would be providing extended time to complete an assignment or providing a work sample. Great. Different problems from the same problem set. Perfect. It can even be adjusting the number of problems that a student completes. So having a student complete 10 problems. If the student's mastering the concept, then they've met that standard versus the standard doesn't state that the student has to complete 100 problems. They have to master the content. Pictures to accommodate words or actions to help a student identify the use of a graphic organizers. Absolutely. So all of these are great examples of ways that we can differentiate our instruction. So I add a couple other things in here. Providing different levels of support. So somebody mentioned, adding additional time to completing an assignment. We can even break down the assignment, be able to give the student the assignment in multiple different chunks. Step-by-step instructions really explicitly write out what they need to do every step of the way. The modality in the way we ask them to complete the assignment can be in a differentiated strategy. We also have grouping learners, tiered lessons. An example of a tiered way of doing it is, again, same assignment, but varying in complexities or the process or the product in which they implement or produce is adjusted based off of the students' levels in groups. So if we were to look at this a little closer, we'd want to identify the standard or the objective for all student, and then we would design 2 to 3 versions of the same task. And this is where that Magic School or Brisk is an awesome resource or tool that you have available to you as an educator. Take that initial assignment, drop it into either Brisk or AI, and ask it to create the same assignment, but maybe at a higher level. Let's say it's a 4th grade student. We're going to create a 5th grade level of that same assignment, and maybe a 2nd or a 3rd grade level of that same assignment. And you would then have multiple different ways of being able to present that same information. The other way of doing this is to have 2 or 3 versions of the same task and allow choice for students. Allow them that voice and choice to be able to involve themselves in that curriculum in their own way. And one way we do that within iLead is we are a big proponent, and our curriculum and our charter is based off of project-based learning. And so we give students the opportunity to have voice and choice in the way that they go through and investigate a question, a driving question, and they have the opportunity to identify different standards and the way that it applies to their learning. And then they get to, whether it's build a relationship with a community member or somebody on campus, to be able to answer that question and be able to figure out how can they present the information at the end with what's called a project of learning. So pretty cool opportunity for students to be able to engage and participate in curriculum in different ways. I included an example of ELA. Tier 1 would be where support's needed, use sentence starters, templates, and a visual summary organizer. Tier 2 would be on level. These are students that are right on grade level, and they're able to write a short paragraph summarizing key points. And then advanced would be comparing and contrasting a text with another text, and then summarizing them both in an essay. So multiple ways of having that tiered engagement and making sure that we're allowing students to access education in the way that they need to. And I'm going to turn it over to Kim for the behavior side of it.
And we're going to move into behavior. We've talked about how to support learners with their academics, looking at, accommodations, modifications, looking at different ways to team teach, and then also differentiating instruction. But we also have to look at behavior strategies and behavior supports that support all learners in the classroom. And for me, the most important, I think, is building and fostering positive relationships with students. And we have to be very deliberate with this. I've seen students who have a lot of behavior challenges in the classroom, but because they have a really strong foundation and relationship with the teacher and the support providers in the classroom, they're able to get them to engage in positive behaviors just based on that relationship. So I don't want anybody to kind of overlook the importance of this, and just allowing the time and the space in the classroom to build those connections where you have those one-on-ones with students. You're making connections with them out in the yard during non-instructional times, just any opportunity to kind of make some deposits into their goal bank of relationships with you and the other adults in the classroom. Another way we can get to know our students is to review prior to the learners coming into the classroom. You probably want to take some time to review historical information, especially with our learners with diverse needs. You can review the CUM files, look at the IEPs, talk to their previous teachers, just to get some background knowledge about all your different learners in the classroom so you can prepare and plan for when they come to the classroom. You want to incorporate activities that allow students to express who they are. We've all done that. Those get to know you activities at the beginning of the year. They're all about me posters. I've seen activities where students talk about their names and what their names mean to me and how they got their name. Any way to just not only for you to get to know your students, but for their peers to get to know each other as well. This is just all about building classroom community. You want to find ways to celebrate diversity, and you want to incorporate diverse material into the classroom, like books about students, looking at the students what type of disabilities or that students in your classroom may have, and putting books or posters or other material in the classroom so that all the learners can learn about each other and have an appreciation for each other. And then also we've seen the neurodiversity fairs and celebrations that all builds an inclusive community within your classroom and your school. Moving on, also you want to establish clear expectations for behavior. We all know how to adjust our behavior based on the setting that we're in, whether we're in a restaurant or at a concert or at a funeral. We all know that those different settings call for different behaviors. Our learners don't know that, and we can't assume that they know that. Sometimes we get ourselves into trouble because we assume that learners come to us with a basic knowledge about how to conduct themselves in the classroom or in a classroom setting, and we can't assume, and sometimes we don't know, and that's varied based on each individual learner. So you want to make sure that you have clear expectations. Make sure that each learner knows like what is expected in that learning space. You want to make sure that those expectations are taught and reviewed regularly. Make sure you differentiate how those expectations are taught for learners with diverse needs. Sometimes you want to do a social story for learners who may have problems or may not be able to access how you're teaching it to the rest of the class, but they can engage with a social story where you have your expectations embedded. You want to ensure classroom expectations are clearly posted and visible all around the classroom. And you may need to individualize that for the learners with diverse needs in your classroom. They may need a visual representation with more visuals as opposed to words. And then sometimes what I've seen done is you can put individual poster size on their desk so they can refer to, or the adults in the classroom can easily help them refer back to what the expectations are. We want to develop a behavior management plan. So when you're looking at reviewing data on your students before they even come, I would spend some time looking at behavior intervention plans, parts of the IEPs that speak on behavior, whether there's an FBA. Look at the struggles that the learners are coming into with so you can plan and be proactive with that. Of course, you want to use positive behavior strategies. Make sure you recognize students who meet behavior expectations. And, those rewards don't always have to be tangible. You can do things like allow them to have some free time. I've seen fun Fridays, anything that you can do to kind of reward those expectations. And then you want to differentiate for students with diverse needs. You want to reward approximations. So sometimes learners can't meet the expectation right off, but they show small progress towards that, and you want to reward that. And sometimes other kids in the classroom may kind of see like, well, why are they getting that and I'm not getting that? And you want to just talk about or be open and just say everybody has different needs in the classroom, and we want to make sure that we are meeting everybody's individual needs. But I want to make sure that you reward approximations, because I've seen learners who are making baby steps towards the goal or towards the expected behavior, but because it's not recognized, then they'll regress. You want to be proactive. Like I said, anticipate the needs based on a review of student information. You want to use frequent praise and acknowledgement. Find opportunities to praise students. And that also goes back to building relationships with students, because once they have their relationship, they're going to seek out your approval. They're going to seek out that praise from you. So you want to make sure you're giving that on a frequent basis. Incorporate brain breaks. Not everyone in the class has the capacity to engage in a learning assignment at the same pace. So just be cognizant of that and make sure that you're incorporating some brain breaks. And you can kind of tell as you go on in the year, like when you need to put those incorporate those into your schedule. And then individual learners may need more frequent brain breaks, right? So you may have to have a learner maybe go and, like I've seen learners where the instructor will say, you know what, Johnny, go outside and run to that tree out there and run back. Or here, I need you to take this to the office. Any way you can incorporate a brain break for those learners who need a little more frequent kind of breaks. If possible, it would be great to incorporate a safe space in your classroom, or a space where learners can go to kind of decompress or kind of de-escalate, and be strategic with the use of the space. Don't send little Johnny over there all the time. Like, oh, little Johnny's is having a hard time. You want to build his capacity to stay, the learner's capacity to stay within the learning environment, but sometimes they will need a break. So having that space in the classroom is wonderful. You want to make sure you're offering the space and not directing learners to go to the space. So like, um, you want to say to the student, like, it seems like you're getting a little upset, or it seems like you're getting a little fidgety. Would you like to go to the safe space, or to whatever you want to call it in your classroom? As opposed to, I need you to go over there, because then it's not a safe space anymore. It's a space where you're sending them on a timeout because they've done something bad. And then anytime you can allow students to have some input in creating the space, they're going to be more, they will want to use the space more if they have some input in creating the space. What saved me a lot of time is also creating a behavior toolkit for your classroom. You can get lots of ideas online on how to create that behavior toolkit, but the ones I've seen or I've created have lots of different types of fidgets for learners. They have art supplies. They have stickers depending on the age level. You want to put things that are age appropriate. But having that little box or that little kit available for when students do need a break, or you're starting to see them amp up, you want to make sure you have your little toolkit available to whip out something if needed, so you can continue on with your lesson. And then the last part, but also most important, very important, is making sure you promote active participation and engagement in the lessons. So you want to ensure engagement for all learners. So I've seen classrooms where there's like a few learners engaged and everybody else is doing something else, or fidgeting, or engaging in inappropriate behavior. So you want to look for ways to bring students with diverse needs into the lesson, and that's doing a lot of pre-planning with that. What will help. You want to look for ways, depending on the learners in your classroom, when you're planning out a lesson, like, I'm going to look for ways where this learner may have an issue, or have a hard time engaging in this lesson, and kind of plan for it. You want to incorporate collaborative activities and projects. So like Kristan kind of shared, that our school is a PBL school, which offers a lot of opportunities for students with diverse needs to kind of get involved in the learning, and in the planning of learning, um, um, and I'm sorry. So you want to plan activities and projects that would allow students to work together in groups, or converse with one another. You want to consider accessible points in the project or activities for diverse learners, and kind of guide the group in incorporating all learners. So you want to make sure you plan that out. So like, if you have a project that you're working on, let me find ways that I can incorporate this student, and kind of guide the group in incorporating all the different participants in the group. You want to incorporate student voice and choice whenever possible. You want to offer choice in assignments. Like, for an example, do you want to complete this this math sheet, or this science sheet? You want to offer choice in assessment of learning. Do you want to write a paper? Do you want to do a project? Or do you want to give an oral presentation? Whenever you can incorporate some voice and choice, would be really good for learners, all learners, but especially learners with diverse needs. And you want to leverage the use of assistive technology, looking at high and low tech. And a lot of our learners with diverse needs, they have service providers. So collaborating with if they have speech and language, if they have occupational therapy, if they have APE, also their SAI provider. So looking at speech to text, text to speech, AI to assist with differentiation, or AAC devices. You just want to look at how you can leverage all types of assistive technology to engage learners in the classroom environment and instruction. And then, I don't know if anybody has any questions so far, but I want to leave us with this video. And then just if I can prefix it a little bit, a lot of our students come in with some challenging behaviors. And if we can look for opportunities to kind of reframe those challenges, like what you see in this video.
I have a lot of memories from when I was a child. One that's always stuck out to me though was when I was about 10 years old and I was in school and I struggled. And I didn't struggle with English, math, or science. I struggled holding still. And I would try to listen and focus and process ideas, but I couldn't help myself. And to be honest, I would sit there and then I would just start tapping. And the students in the class would look at me and they'd say, "Hey, stop tapping." A lot of the time, I didn't even realize I was doing it. And then eventually even the teachers got after me and they would yell at me and they'd say, "Clint, you have to stop tapping." It got so bad that I got sent to the principal's office for tapping. And he said to me, "Okay, maybe when you go back to class, just try sitting on your hands." And so I did. I went back to class, and when I felt myself starting to tap, I did this. I sat on my hands. And that worked for about 5 seconds. One time I was tapping in class, and my teacher, Mr. Jensen, he looked at me and he yelled. And he said, "Clint, stay after class." And I thought to myself, this is it. I am done. Now, I've always been the type of person that believes that a single moment in time can change a person's life. And this was one of those moments for me. And I will never forget it. And so I was sitting there with Mr. Jensen and an empty classroom. And he walked past me and he sat next to his desk and he said, "Clint, come here. I want to talk to you." And as he looked me right in the eye, he said, "Now, I need you to know something. You're not in trouble. But I do have just one question that I have to ask you." And he asked, he said, "Have you ever thought about playing the drums?" And in that moment, Mr. Jensen, he leaned back and he opened the top drawer of his desk. And he reached in and he pulled out my very first pair of drumsticks. And he held them in his hands and he looked at me and he said, "Hey, Clint, you're not a problem. I think you're a drummer." And from that moment on, I've never put those sticks down. I've toured, recorded, and played drums all over the world. My whole college education was paid for with drumsticks in my hand. Just because of a single moment in time when somebody believed in me and he saw something in me that I didn't even see within myself. And from that moment, I learned that there's a difference between being the best in the world and being the best for the world.
So I just want to leave us with that. I don't know how many people have seen that video, but let's work hard to be a Mr. Jensen for our learners, because sometimes the challenges that they come to us with, they've been labeled as challenges or challenging behavior, but a simple reframing can change the trajectory of a student's life. With that, we're going to close. Thank you so much again, everyone, for joining us today. We have this little end slide. We are hiring, and I don't know if you've ever heard of iLead Schools, but it is a wonderful charter. I'm new to the charter world. I've been with districts and county offices for the bulk of my career, but I can truly say with all honesty that there is nothing like working for a charter school. The freedom that you have just to be creative with your students is unparalleled. So I'll leave you with that. And I don't know, Kristan, you want to add anything? We can't hear you, Kristan. You're muted.
Got it on mute. As Kim said, go and really define yourself as being either being a Mr. Jensen, and know that inclusion starts with that intentional action. Building those relationships should be at the forefront of what you do. And we're grateful to your commitment to education as a whole. And if you ever have any questions, both of our email addresses are on the screen. We'll stay on for a few more minutes, but let's make inclusion a reality together. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah, we'll also ask all of the presenters to share their presentations, and we'll be able to share that out with everyone. So before you leave, just a reminder, if you can, fill out your opportunity drawing survey. I just dropped into the chat the link. Please fill that out, and you can also give feedback to the presenters using this survey. But yeah, we want to make sure, thank you for attending. And yeah, we want to make sure to include your name in the drawing. So thank you so much, Kimberly and Kristan. Appreciate
Our
you
pleasure.
sharing these
Absolutely.
amazing things. All right. So yeah, otherwise, I'll leave you two to, if there's anyone who has other questions, but yeah, just if folks can fill out this survey. I'm going to head out to the next session.
Yeah, no worries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Have a great day.